Well, hello and welcome to Politics Today, coming to you live from Channels Television's global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikolu, sitting in for Sheon Okinbaloye. But tonight we begin with our breaking news. And news just in has it that Joint Security Team has rescued His Royal Highness Acho Ndukwe, one of the traditional rulers who was kidnapped yesterday in Okigwe local government area of Imo State. Well, this comes after the operatives raided criminal camps in Osu and Ihiala local government areas in Anambra State, where they also arrested 30 suspected kidnappers. Again, a joint security team has rescued His Royal Highness Acho Ndukwe as one of the traditional rulers kidnapped yesterday in Okigwe local government area of Imo State. And the operatives are said to have raided criminal camps in Osu and Ihiala local government areas in Anambra State, and they've arrested 30 suspected kidnappers. Well, this is a developing story, so stay with Channels Television as we bring you the latest. And on to the next one, a countdown. President Muhammadu Buhari now has 5 days to sign or not to sign the electoral bill into law. Well, the National Assembly had transmitted the bill to him on November the 19th after a very eventful process that saw members engaged in fisticuffs over the electronic transmission clause. Well, the Nigerian Constitution requires that President Buhari sign any bill transmitted to him within 30 days, and less than a week to go, there's some anxiety as to the president's decision. Well, we've been here before, that was in 2018 at least, but at that time, the president didn't give assent, partly over drafting issues and the timing. So will this time be any different, seeing that we are more than a year away from the next general election in 2023? Well, don't forget that this law has provisions that are expected to smoothen election operations and also introduce the use of technology for the conduct of elections as well as for transmission of results. So whatever the case, we shall know the president's mind within 5 days. I will definitely keep our eyes on that one. And moving on now, the federal government's economic policies have again come under criticism. This time by Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, who says that the APC-led government lacks the will to improve the livelihood of Nigerians. Well, Governor Wike was speaking at the commissioning of a reconstructed road in Port Harcourt, that's the state capital, where he said a serious government will not be talking about economic stimulation without completing the roads that are critical to economic development. He listed some of the roads to be the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and refinery section of the East-West Road in Rivers State. Well, he proposed a change in leadership as a solution while expressing the hope that the PDP will retake power in 2023 to salvage the situation.
Administration is doing nothing to improve the lives of the citizens. It's just story. And that was why I told our National Party chairman yesterday in Benue. I said, look, it is not easy this period that Nigeria requires change of leadership. And God has given you the opportunity to be the one that will lead for this change. And it is not going to be easy. It will be very, very difficult. But being firm, being committed, you will achieve it. And we're all here to support him to achieve it. By the grace of God, PDP will take over 2023. I pray INEC will continue with this system where now everybody will go and campaign and people's vote will count. Because when people's votes count, political office holders will not be accountable to the people. When their votes don't count, political office holders will not be accountable to the people.
Well, let's now bring you some other top political stories. Well, here's our political roundup.
The Katsina state government has flagged off a sensitization workshop for all ministries, departments and agencies of the State Executive Council members in the effort to eliminate corruption in the state. The three-day workshop on the state public procurement procedure was held at the banquet hall of the General Muhammadu Buhari State House, Katsina.
Thank you, Your Excellency. At this point in time, I'd like to...
The Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba Alkali, is anticipating a challenging year in 2022 and has charged strategic police managers to brace up to the challenges that the year will present. Speaking at a meeting with senior police officers in Abuja, the police boss announced plans for the launch of the operational vehicles in 2022 to boost its operational performance to tackle the challenge of insecurity, while recruitment of 10,000 police constables is being worked on.
We also succeeded to any other thing than to hit the ground running if elected as governor.
The chairman of the Southern Senators Forum, Senator Okpeyemi Bamidele, is confident that the method of primaries, whether direct or indirect, will not stop him from becoming the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in Ekiti State in 2022.
The age standing in for help.
Senator Bamidele stated this when he received a group called Ekiti Concerned Professionals who came to present him a check for his expression of interest nomination form. He says he's looking forward to a decent governorship race, which is popular, driven by ideas on issues and violence-free.
And there will be reckoned with within the Committee of States.
Well, tonight on the program, we critically examine the National Assembly and how well it has delivered on the seemingly straightforward tripartite mandate of representing the electorate, making laws and executive oversight. Well, that's clear enough on paper, but in reality, how do Nigerians rate their representatives vis-a-vis these mandates? Well, the Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, is concerned about how the public perceives the National Assembly. While delivering a paper at the maiden Distinguished Parliamentarian Lecture Series organized by the National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies in Abuja, Senator Lawan reeled out different perceptions about the legislature, and he says the Ninth Assembly serves as a buffer against tyranny and therefore cannot be a rubber stamp institution. He also spoke about the much talked about budget of the National Assembly, which according to him seems inadequate. Take a listen.
The budget of the National Assembly appears grossly inadequate, given its mandate, membership, the scope of operations and agencies under it. For instance, the Assembly will require additional billions of naira if its core committees are to effectively undertake oversight functions, including visits as mandated in the Constitution and the standing orders. Interestingly, the budget of the National Assembly not only constitutes a fraction of the federal government budget, but it is also significantly lower than allocations to other sectors that get even less attention. Consider the 2022 proposed appropriation, where defense and security are allocated 2.41 trillion, 15%, infrastructure 1.45 trillion, 8.9%, education 1.29 trillion, 7.9%, health 820 billion naira, that's 5%, and social development and poverty eradication 863 billion naira, representing 5.3% of the entire allocation. These are critical sectors of the economy, and the importance of adequate funding to them cannot be underestimated. However, the same level of scrutiny that is given to the National Assembly budget should also be applied to other sectors where bigger chunks of the nation's resources are utilized. A common misperception, one that has been propagated by the media, is that legislative functions must be undertaken in antagonism with the executive arm of government. This terrible misunderstanding and conceptualization of how the government is supposed to work have led many to brand us as a rubber stamp legislature. Nothing can be further from the truth. I will discuss the importance of harmonious executive-legislative relations in subsequent sections. Allow me, however, to state that the concept of tres politica or separation of powers is the basis of our presidential democracy. As propounded by prominent political philosophers, including Hobbes, Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau, it entails the division of government responsibilities into distinct branches, namely the legislature, the executive, and judiciary. However, while separation of powers is key to the workings of government, no democratic system exists with an absolute separation of powers.
Well, so he took some time to address some of those issues. In fact, he also promised that the National Assembly will pass the 2022 budget before the end of this legislative week. Of course, we'll keep our eyes on that as well. But this is not the first time that he and other members of the National Assembly have had to address some of these issues, and it might not be the last. So we're taking a methodical approach to this discussion on the program tonight. From the early years of the National Assembly in the Fourth Republic, what were the challenges? Then we move to the current Ninth Assembly to see if anything has changed, and we explore how we can better link the civil society with the legislature. And tonight, we're joined on the program by Honorable Dachang Bagos, who's a member of the National Assembly, representing Just South, Just East, Federal Constituency of Plateau State. He's a member of the PDP, and he joins us from our Abuja studio. Also, Honorable Farouk Aliyu, former Minority Leader, House of Reps, and APC Chieftain, will be joining us from our Kano studio. And virtually, we have Mr. Awal Rafsanjani, who is Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, that's CISLAC. He joins us via Zoom from Cairo on the program. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to begin virtually. I mean, we've listened to the President of the Senate, who strongly believes that people have the wrong perception about the National Assembly. So, Mr. Rafsanjani, you work with the legislative arm and the civil society, so you sort of have a view from both sides of the divide, as it were. Do you agree, first, that Nigerians have a wrong perception of the Ninth Assembly?
Well, thank you very much. I think the Senate leader or the Senate president was right to say that Nigerians have a trouble perception about the National Assembly. And this is as a result of the inability of the National Assembly to also educate and enlighten Nigerians about the roles and responsibility of the legislature. Secondly, their inability to also demonstrate, sometimes seriousness in the way and manner in which they carry out their work give so much concern to many Nigerians. Thirdly, the kind of utterances, which is a self-defeat or acceptance of defeat about the relationship between the legislature and the executive, as amplified even by the Senate president, continue to give Nigerians concern. Thirdly, I think, it is about, communication. If National Assembly has challenges and they are not able to put these challenges in a manner that Nigerians can appreciate them, can say that, okay, we need more resources for the National Assembly, based on informed need assessment. You don't expect Nigerians just to say that, yes, you need more money. No, I think there's need for National Assembly to be more open, more transparent. For example, civil society and even the Senate itself had made promises saying that they will make their budget public, known. But till today, even members of National Assembly, unless you are a principal officer, you do not even know anything about how the resources is managed or how it is utilized. So if you expect Nigerians just to, say that you don't have problem, you need money, this and this, that will not happen. We are in democracy and we are talking about open government, and if the National Assembly really wants Nigerians to appreciate them, then they need to also change the way and manner in which communication goes out. Again, I want to also state that National Assembly, they are the one, especially this particular Senate, they are the one who made the assertion that whatever the president wants, they will do it. Under democracy, where you're supposed to have separation of power between legislature and the executive, you cannot be submissive, you cannot be like a houseboy or house girl of it, the executive. You must assert your responsibility as enshrined in the Constitution. There's a reason for why the Constitution clearly gives you that mandate. And if you know you cannot, carry out that mandate, then I think you have no business being in the National Assembly. You cannot compromise your own powers, which is supposed to help checkmate the excesses of the executive or ensure compliance of programs, legislation.
You have touched on some of the important
government.
points that we're going to be looking in tonight, but I'd like you to hold your thoughts for a moment so I can bring in our other guests so we can have this round table efficiently. So Honorable Bagos, he joins us from our Abuja studio. Listening to the Senate President got me thinking, how is it possible really for people, and by people, I don't mean people from outside the country, I mean your people, the people you represent, to have a wrong perception about you? I mean, every Nigerian has one representative or the other in the National Assembly. So how then is it possible for those people who, I mean, are expected to have some form of relationship, some form of interaction with you from time to time, to have a wrong perception of you?
Yeah, Kairi, is quite unfortunate because let me pick from what Rasfanjani clearly stated out, that the perception at which Nigerians have on the National Assembly, it's something that is going to be very difficult for the National Assembly itself to clear. Because of even some of us, before getting into the National Assembly, we have been conversing for transparency of the National Assembly on some certain levels. And again, when we got in, we still discovered and found out that, yes, what we were even talking about the National Assembly from outside, it's not the way it is. But at the same time, the true nature of perception, the real information getting out to the general public, it's one of the major problems that we have for the National Assembly. The Senate President have tried his best to give out some of the major information. But to me, from my own opinion, not the opinion of the generality of, maybe I'm speaking on behalf of the National Assembly, is that from what I have seen is that partisan politics usually play into what we do in the National Assembly. Yes, once we start doing our own campaign from outside at different various party levels, once we get into the National Assembly, we are not supposed to be partisan. Despite the fact that even the 9th National Assembly, we have our own slogan with the name Joint Tax. The Speaker and the National Assembly, we have tried as much as possible to come into one, to exhibit and to do what we need to do as one voice. But you still find that partisan level that have to do with the executive. You still find that sentiment that because I'm party A, so the executive is still party A, so we need to water down some things. But that's not what's supposed to be in terms of true governance. That's the major problem that National Assembly members have had, and National Assembly entirely.
So, if I get you correct,
made it very difficult for perception to change.
If I get you correct, Honorable Bagos, you're saying that partisan politics is responsible for people, your people, perceiving
absolutely.
or having the wrong perception of the National Assembly. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even talking about APC. It has been there since the establishment of the National Assembly, that you find the executive want to really install whosoever it's there for them to be able to execute their own agenda. And that has been the problem of the National Assembly since inception. And if, until we look at effective oversight, we'll look at how we can really see the budget is being implemented as it is, then we'll have a headway. But as long as we don't have effective oversight, as long as we don't call the executive to order, as long as from our own investigative hearings, from our own constituency outreaches to be able to see that this is what's supposed to be done. And as long as National Assembly have not ensured that any of the heads of the executives is in jail as a result of misappropriation or misapplication, then to me it's partisan. So
Okay.
if you try
So,
to water
Honorable
down
Bagos,
some of these things, definitely it's going to be a problem for us.
okay, it's quite interesting how this, I mean, the trajectory that the conversation has taken now. It's now being put at the doorstep of the executive, politics, and the rest. But we'll come back to some of these issues. Let's take Honorable Farouk Ali's opening comments. He joins us from our Kano studio this evening. Good evening, Honorable. I mean, you were in the National Assembly way before now, so you can give us some perspective into, I mean, how we got here, what exactly played out at that time. But first, I'd like to get your response, I mean, if you will, to the comments made by Governor Nyesom Wike about this government's economic policies. And he scores it really low. He referenced some projects that are not completed, and he says that's where to actually start from. I wonder, how do you respond? Because I know this affects not just the government, but your party as well.
Yeah, good evening, viewers. You see, for Wike, he's entitled to his opinion. And it's unfortunate that somebody like him, that this government, that he calls whatever kind of name he wants to call, gave back to him about 400 billion naira repayment back on roads that he was talking about. You know, so, you know, when you're in opposition, you can rant and so on. So to me, when anybody from the other party says we are low, it's their own opinion. And then that's the beauty of democracy, which means whatever we're doing now, if the people of this country don't agree with it, let's do that at the polling units, so that when next time election comes, they should vote us out, but not to be churning out lies. Now, he spoke about Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which is ongoing. He spoke about East-West Road, which is ongoing. The second Niger Bridge is ongoing. So many road projects are going all over the country, and in his own state as well. As I told you, the funds of monies, you know, spent by real estate government was given to him. Well, that's aside. Now let's go back to the main issue. Now, you see, honestly, there is misconception of the public as it regards to National Assembly members. One, when I was in National Assembly, and I'm sure it happens to most of my colleagues there, from my own constituency, not a single person has ever asked me about a motion, a bill, or an act. How do these things, or what should I do? But what the public, concerned public most, it's my wife has delivered, I want to go for a naming ceremony, or school, scholarship, and what have you. Now, you find out that the society, it's after what they will get from members. And sadly, members of the National Assembly are much, much closer than those at the executive arm of government. And then when my brother, junior colleague Bagos, said that partisan politics, this is part of democracy. In the United States of America that we borrowed this constitution from, you remember when impeachment process was put last year against the United States president? What happened? His own party came for him. So it's normal in democracy that the party will stand by its own party and give the members what they want to do, but that does not mean they should take it hook, line, and sinker. Let me give you an example recently. The same National Assembly rejected nomination of a nominee that was put up by Mr. President to be INA commissioner. It was rejected. The Senate President and majority of members belong to APC. So it's not about that. But yes, when I concede that, yes, politics comes to play. And that's democracy. So if, as I said, come back to the people. If the people are not happy, they should make sure they send in members. And let me give you a personal example. You see, there are some members of National Assembly that probably will not sit and learn. When I personally was in, let me give an example about myself. There was this word called cognate. Before I went to the National Assembly, I've never had this word. So when we went to the chambers, I remember Speaker Masari would always speak on cognate members, cognate. So one time I stood up and said, Mr. Speaker, sir, my name is Honorable Farouk Adam Ali Cognate. I didn't know what it was that time. You see, so I was made to understand the meaning of cognate, which means members also need to understand the ropes so that they'll be able to explain to the public that, look, this is exactly what we are doing. We don't come here to dish out money or dish out constituency projects, because all these constituency issues are all things that is giving the people misconception that National Assembly is where to go and make money. I rest my case for now.
Honorable Aliyu, let me just follow up on that quickly. I mean, you were in the National Assembly when there were talks about, monies being put in Ghana-Moscow bags, which are essentially just huge travel bags. I mean, that's what it is called. In fact, you have referenced that you were offered financial inducement. So, I mean, people look at members of the National Assembly, they see money bags, essentially, and you say that that's not the case. Are you saying members of the National Assembly are cash-strapped? Would you blame the people then?
No, let me tell you, like also during my time, yes, monies were distributed, like during the third term issue, the executive arm of government of that time dished out minimum of $50 million to members who are willing to take. Some of us were given $400 million, we didn't take. But that's true. There are some inducements. Do
you mean $1 million or million naira, Honorable Aliyu? Dollars or naira?
Naira, sorry. Naira,
oh, right.
Naira,
okay,
naira.
Just to be clear.
We're talking of naira. 50 million naira was the least minimum that was dished out during the third term issue of President Obasanjo. That time is true, and I remember Masari was about 500 million. He didn't take. There are some of us, but then the beauty of democracy, at that time, Bagos should find out that at that time, the National Assembly came in unison. No PDP, no other parties. The National Assembly killed that bill. And it died. So I hope my colleagues in the National Assembly now will try to work in unison so that, look, they should not be cowed by the government of the day. They should be able to stand up, against the government if anything comes that is anti-people, because that's why they are there.
Right. So let me take this back to Honorable Bagos, because you referenced him. Is that still rampant now? I mean, essentially seeing financial inducements from different different areas, maybe the executive, or, I mean, as Honorable Bagos referenced during his time. Does that still happen now?
Well, maybe during their own time, but this might almost get into the third time in the National Assembly. Nobody has ever tried to induce me with anything, and even if anybody tried to do that, as the deputy chairman of anti-corruption, you know the consequences. I do my job uprightly, and we say it as it is, because we want Nigeria to be better, and we will not want what has happened in the past to ever happen again. But again, the executive always have a way of making their own things fly whatsoever they want through their own party members. He has acknowledged that, yes, you still have the partisan politics alongside with the executive. But my own is that, yes, the fact that the executive still have things to fly through their own party members, my own is that whatsoever needs to fly, does it have the interest of the people? Because if we have most of the things that have the interest of the people, we shouldn't have been talking about roads that have been there for long. We shouldn't have been talking about some social incentives, sharing 5,000 or 20,000 to people, which will not increase and do anything to their own livelihood. What are those direct benefit of incentives that will last a legacy for the next 50 years? That because part of the perception is that as a legislator, if I own a generator in my house when there is no light, and my neighbor does not have a generator, he will outrightly look at, well, I live a better life than him. But if there is light around my area entirely, and whatsoever I do, nobody will benefit, nobody will be worried. In terms of insecurity, what are we talking about insecurity? As that perception as well. If we had really looked at the issue of insecurity, which we have talked about, but there are some other steps that can and could be taken, even from the legislative angle, in terms of addressing the issue of insecurity. But because of partisan politics, the APC members cannot boldly say, look, we need to take some constitutional steps to be able to address the executive in terms of insecurity. Yes, collectively we have all talked about insecurity in the House, but still because of partisan politics, there are a lot of APC members cannot boldly and outrightly face the executive and tell them that, look, get out of the way, you cannot address the issue of insecurity.
Honorable
so these
Bagos,
are the issues that we have been looking, and because of those areas,
Honorable Bagos, if I may just butt in now,
giving us
we're due for a break.
We are rubber stamp.
Right, so we're due for a break, and on that point you made about rubber stamp, we'll come back and touch on that. We'll still have Mr. Awar Rafsanjani, who has a view from both sides. Don't forget that SIRAP is asking the National Assembly to respond to the allegations of 10 billion naira missing. That's public money, by the way. These are allegations from the 2019 report of the Auditor General, and a lot of other issues to discuss on the program tonight. So please stay with us. You're welcome back. So how do you rate the National Assembly? I mean, what comes to mind when you think about the Senate, the House of Representatives, and its members? Well, let's continue the conversation tonight. Honorable Dachang Bagus is a member of the House of Representatives, joining us from our Abuja studio. We also have a former minority leader in the House of Representatives, Honorable Farouk Aliyu, who joins us from our Kano studio. And joining us virtually is Mr. Awar Rafsanjani, who is the Executive Director of CISLAC. So, Mr. Rafsanjani, let me come to you now. And a case in point, when we talk about, the perception of the National Assembly and the reality, as the Senate President mentioned, is this case in point regarding the 10 billion naira, which is said to have been missing, according to the 2019 Auditor General's report. And SERAP has written a letter asking that, the leadership of the National Assembly respond to this. So when people sometimes think about the National Assembly, they remember these, monies that come up here and there in the news regarding budgeting, missing funds, and the rest. How rampant are these allegations, Mr. Rafsanjani?
The National Assembly members, some of them that are, concerned about their integrity, they're very much worried because Nigerians, whether you like it or not, Nigerians have formed their opinion about the way and manner in which some of the National Assembly members, including the principal officers, they behave and the response to issues, and in terms of also legislative accountability. So don't blame Nigerians for having this perception, because you are not able to, through communication strategy, be able to be transparent in terms of communicating to Nigerians, telling them the truth about your condition or your situation. So if you expect Nigerians who, because they do not have information, they do not have credible information from you, you left them with the option of forming their own opinion. So if you want to clear your name, you must always be often transparent and communicate with the constituents, with the people you are representing and Nigerian people at large. But if you keep quiet and you assume that Nigerians should know, definitely this cannot work. Secondly, the disregard of even the law that the National Assembly are making is also something that Nigerians, they don't find it, funny. For example, you legislated public procurement law, and based on all the reports that have been coming, you are one of the greater violators of the public procurement law. Secondly, you were supposed to make your budget known, like you have made promises severally. Up to today, nobody knows the budget to the National Assembly, how the principal officers are spending that money. Thirdly, even the constituency project that you do, you see how ICPC and EFCC keep on chasing many of the National Assembly members because of their inability to do what they are supposed to do, even with this so-called constituency project money. Now, many Nigerians are worried that even job offers that some of the members are getting, they're selling to their, instead of giving it to their constituents, they are selling it according to the allegations. So if you expect Nigerians to just overlook all this, just to make you happy to say that everything is okay, it will not happen. Now, the truth of the matter is that the National Assembly need to do a lot in terms of public education. To have resources devoted for this, to interact with their constituents, to be able to get information from them. Honorable Farouk had mentioned that nobody had asked him, about the status of bill or this and that, that and that. I think, Honorable, with due respect, it is your responsibility to begin to organize, constituents, to engage them so that they understand even what role you are even playing. If you expect them just, to assume that they know everything, and you expect them just to make a pass mark I don't think that is not the case, because constituency offices are established and resources are devoted to it. And part of the reason for that constituency offices is to interact with their constituents. You know, if they have any information, they can provide for you. If you have any issue that you can seek their opinion about it, you also get that. I think
Mr.
that's the way
Rafsanjani,
it should be.
So let me get some response to the issues you raised, and I'll begin with Honorable Baga. So I'm sure you must have listened while Mr. Rafsanjani spoke about the public procurement law, talked about constituency projects, even spoke about job slots, sometimes says they are sold. Just for you, and perhaps members that you have in your caucus, how true are these allegations?
It's quite unfortunate. I will quite a little bit disagree with Rafsanjani on two certain areas in terms of job employment. I know how people knock on our doors. I can't count the number of CVs I have in my office. So it's going to be very a disservice for any member to have gotten a job opportunity and say that he wants to sell it. I know how members are going around looking for job opportunities. I know how they have to batch on us on daily basis to write a recommendation letter to me, which is even wrong. Why must we as National Assembly members going around writing recommendation letters for job opportunities, going around trying to lobby for job opportunities, instead of every MDA, the Civil Service Commission, to take people on merit? But it has now turned to be who you know for you to be able to get a job. Your father must be a minister or your uncle must be this. These are the issues that we are now saying that, look, the problem majorly is with the executive. And they have now caged the legislators into doing what is not right, because the legislators are with the people on daily basis. The people cannot access the executive as they access the legislators. So those are the people, the legislators that the people are always seeing. So they have now made the legislators, they are employing in this ministry, they're employing in this agency, I need a recommendation letter, which is not supposed to be so. Any agency that is supposed to employ, supposed to take people on merit. So a lot of graduates outside there, a lot of issues. So a lot of things need to be addressed by the executive first. Again, on the issue of constituency project, since I entered the National Assembly, I have never received anything in terms of constituency allowance. Yes, we have had issues with some ministries and how it has now, how they have mingle with some scrupulous people to be able to divert some of these constituency projects. As a member of the anti-corruption committees, we know those ones, so we cannot dispute those facts that we have some illegalities going on. But not that monies are being given to members, but we have an issue where ministries, agencies will now connive with some constituencies to be able to divert and some projects. So those are the issues that
Honorable Bagas, you have oversight.
The Speaker and even the Senate President are frustrated on some certain issues like this. Because so, I know how frustrated the leadership are on terms of some of these issues.
So what then happens to the oversight powers you have? I mean, what should be done to these things? But we'll perhaps try to get some of these, responses.
You see, on the oversight...
Just a moment, Honorable Bagos. I want to get Honorable Aliyu to respond to a point Mr. Rafsanjani made earlier. We'll try to bounce this off as we move along. So, Honorable Aliyu, Mr. Rafsanjani gave you an action point. Maybe retrospectively, except you're planning to run for, office as a member of the National Assembly yet again. But he thinks that you should have actually gone out to enlighten members of your constituents rather than wait for them to come to you. So maybe retrospectively, could you have done that?
No, let me tell you, my brother Rafsanjani does not know. And he should know also that before coming to National Assembly or any elective office, you go about campaign. You tell them exactly what you're going to do. So such of things, those are some of the things we tell them. And then anytime you go back to the constituency, you try to tell them that, look, we're not there to get you projects. We're not there to do this thing. We're supposed to make laws and so on. But thank God, Representative and I are from the same place. We are Nigerians, from the same locality, and he knows. He knows that some of those things are simply impossible. Now, but let me speak for and against the National Assembly. Now, you see, back in the days when I was there, this constituency project of a thing, when we were there, we had no input in what project goes where. The only thing we do was to give sites where projects will take place. Unfortunately now, members of National Assembly have decided to cause all this abuse on us. Because you find out members of National Assembly, and I'm sure Bagos knows, that some of them nominate contractors. Some of them even write letters of completion to government agencies. Some members of National Assembly also put projects in some places where they do not need them, just so that they can give contracts to buy motorcycle and so on and what have you. So those are some of the things that really members of National Assembly need to look at to make sure they oversight properly. But otherwise, when they start behaving like this, then the members of executive, that's why some of them will come before National Assembly and say all sorts of nonsense to members of National Assembly. We witness where some members of executives come before the National Assembly and accuse members of National Assembly of certain things that are not, right to be done. But then when you look at on the other side, there is not enough money for members of National Assembly to carry out the oversight. Because you need these monies to go and carry oversight. And if you don't give them, like vehicles that the Senate President spoke about, I'm telling you the committees don't have enough vehicles. Still, as at today, there are some government agencies that come to assist members of National Assembly on oversight functions because the monies are not enough in National Assembly. But then I also consider that members of National Assembly need to certainly go on advocacy, need to be speaking to the public, need to be more transparent, need to be telling the people, this is exactly what we have spent, this is what we have gotten, so that there will be, this misconception will go away. But as of now, yes, I think we need to be talking more to the people, and also members of National Assembly need to take themselves away from nominating contractors who will do their projects. If Bagos doesn't do that, a lot of members of National Assembly will do that.
Well, Honorable Bagos, it will seem Honorable Farouk Aliyu has spoken for you. He vouches for you. And interestingly, he belongs to different political parties. Honorable Bagos is of the PDP, Honorable Aliyu is for the APC. So it will seem you brought the National Assembly right here, speaking with one voice. But let's talk about that oversight function, really. And for a lot of people, a test which they're looking at, I mean, they're just watching, is this electoral bill, which you have transmitted to the president. And well, we have 5 days to go now, according to law, according to the Constitution, for the president to assent to that bill. I wonder what you're getting from the feelers, because there were allegations or reports that maybe it will not go through, and there are reports from the president saying, no, that's not the case. But 5 days to go. Are you confident that this will go through? And if it doesn't, is this National Assembly ready to veto the president?
On this note of the electoral bill, I must take this time to commend Channels Television for making this, for bringing out this countdown, because this is the perspective of the public pressure that, look, the executive needs to know, as long as the National Assembly is concerned, we have done what is needed. You could remember even the issue of the electronic transmission that caused serious rancor in the House. Because of public pressure, we came back to the table and did the right thing. Now it has been transmitted to the executive. And we have been putting pressure on our own. And now it's left from the people outside our own constituents that we have really worked to show that this is done with the public pressure to ensure that the executive do the right thing. And again, is the National Assembly willing and ready to veto? Yes, we have been talking among ourselves, especially the PDP members. That look, we're going to definitely move a motion in respect to that, to the issue of the veto, if the president did not sign as of when due, because a lot of resources have come into play because of this electoral bill. A lot of issues, people sleepless night, a lot of disagreement on the floor. and again, just like that, and it will not be signed. It's a serious disservice to the National Assembly and to Nigerians that have put in so much effort, so much pressure, so much hope, because this is a part of strengthening democracy, to see that the right thing is done, to see that members of the National Assembly and the executive governors at whatever level that will come into power in 2023 are truly people that come in as a result of strengthening democracy. Because every assembly amend the Electoral Act so that whatsoever that was done in 2019, to look at where the areas that were not done properly, to be able to. So now that we want to see that the 2023 election is better than 2019 election, and that is why we amended the Electoral Act. So we expect that in the next 5 days, the president will sign this, because to me, it's going to be a very big disservice to my constituents.
So I'll come to Mr. Rafsanjani in a moment, but let me take on Honorable Aliyu, because it's one thing for the PDP representative to say, yes, we're ready to veto. But then, I mean, the National Assembly is not made up of just PDP. In fact, PDP is a minority. The APC is a majority. So Honorable Aliyu, I mean, from what you see, the representatives from the APC in the National Assembly, do you think that they are ready to veto the president on this one?
Well, first of all, I think this bill, has the probably backing of a lot of people in this country, and I'm sure the president will do the needful. But in case he decides to withhold his assent, I don't think the National Assembly can veto Mr. President, because I was probably the only member of the National Assembly who went through referendum to be recalled. So that's where parties will play. And all we need to do is to do few things, it will fail. Because the Mr. President will not withhold his assent for no reason. If he does that, there will be cogent reason. But I pray he does what the people want.
So, Mr. Rafsanjani, is there any reason cogent enough for you, for the president to say, well, I'm not signing this? Is there any reason that will be cogent enough for you?
First and foremost, I think this is really shocking for Nigerians, that the president, who has been clamoring and talking about electoral fraud and lack of electoral transparency, and personally experiencing electoral cheat and fraud. We have spent 6 years. The president has not submitted a bill to amend and correct the electoral fraud in Nigeria. That was the first shocking. The second shocking is that Nigerians have overwhelmingly came out through public hearings, through memorandums, through speaking, through discussion, dialogue, to demand that there must be amendment to electoral reform, to Electoral Act, so that we will have electoral reform that can restore confidence on Nigerians about our electoral system. So if the president is not able to do that, to sign this electoral amendment, it will be the second shock that Nigerians will have. But I hope that the president will not listen to those who are beneficiary of electoral fraud to push him or to lobby him not to respond to the yearning and aspiration of Nigerians in terms of improving the electoral act that will make Nigerians have confidence in the electoral process, that will make it more transparent, that will give ownership of party members to elect their officials, and eventually, during the general election, they see that we have credible, responsible, quality, competent Nigerians across political parties that will contest the election, and the election will now be done in a manner that will make it transparent and meet the yearning and aspiration of Nigerians. So I am hoping that President will listen to the majority of Nigerians who are victims of electoral transparency in Nigeria, not to listen to those minority ones that are beneficiary of electoral fraud in Nigeria, who are now determined to ensure that all the resources spent to carry out this electoral reform in the National Assembly, they are determined to make sure that it becomes a waste.
So do you see,
based on his stand on the anti-corruption, should not allow public waste by refusing to sign this electoral amendment?
So do you see the direct versus indirect primaries clause as a major contentious part of this bill that perhaps might be a reason for the president to say, well, this is not clear just yet. You go back and work on it. Is that enough?
The president is not the one organizing election. INEC is the one that is organizing election. And INEC has said repeatedly that they are ready to do that. So why should the president listen to anybody else outside INEC? INEC is the constituted authority organizing election in Nigeria. And they have said it severally that they are ready to carry on with supervising the party primaries. So why should the president listen to those tiny minority who are enjoying electoral fraud?
Well, so we're in our concluding moments now. We have about 2 minutes to wind down the program, and I'll try to just split this across our three guests. And let me begin with Honorable Bagos. I mean, I know that a lot of Nigerians are looking up to the National Assembly to do right by them, to essentially represent them. And I wonder your final thoughts on this one now. In terms of being the voice of the people, how much would you rate this current 9th Assembly? And what are the areas you would want to improve on?
Yeah, mine, rating the 9th National Assembly, especially speaking with one voice against some of the ills in the society in terms of economy, in terms of insecurity. We have all spoken with one voice. So I will really rate us high, because if the executive had implemented just 30% of the motions and most of the things that we have said on the National Assembly, we couldn't have been where we are now. And to the general public, we should try to be able to look at the executive corruption instead of more of the trying to cage perception to have legislative corruption, because 80% of the National Assembly members have the highest of 8 years, while in the executive you have, apart from the ones that are appointed, have 35 years in service, where
Honorable
a lot
Bagos,
of corruption is being perpetrated, even within the National Assembly bureaucracy.
So we have to be fair on the program, Honorable Bagos,
down, those who are the
because
managers.
of our time.
So these are issues that I would really
Honorable
love
Bagos,
that the perception will start looking at.
Right, so let's take Honorable Aliu's closing thoughts on this one in terms of being the voice of the people and what area to improve on. If you could do in 30 seconds.
Well, I think National Assembly should try to be more, independent. Certainly, take the interest of the people. Not look at executive. If the executive, just like this, I'm speaking now as a parliamentarian. They passed this bill. If the president does not assent to it, they should do the needful.
All right. Well, Mr. Rafsanjani, your closing thoughts on the program tonight.
My closing thought is that the Senate President, he has been in the National Assembly since 1999 to date. If Nigerians are misunderstanding his leadership and his role that he's playing with regard to executive-legislature relationship, there's need for him to reflect and sit down and see what he can do in favor of Nigerian people, not in favor of pleasing the executive that does not even have respect for the National Assembly. I can tell you that the executive, the way they are, they don't even have respect and regard for the National Assembly and for the Senate President. So let him do the right thing so that he doesn't look to be like people will be seeing him as a sycophant who is not delivering what he's supposed to do. Let him go back and do what he's supposed to do as a legislator.
Well, Mr. Awol Rafsanjani, the Executive Director of CISLAC, he joined us via Zoom this evening from Cairo in Egypt. Thank you so much for your time, as well as Honorable Dachong Bagos, who is current member of the House of Representatives, is also a member of the PDP. He joined us from our Abuja studio, as well as Honorable Farouk Aliyu, former minority leader in the House of Reps and a chieftain of the APC. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program tonight.
Thank you.
And that's the package for today, but we'll be back tomorrow. We'll continue our countdown and we'll bring you the latest political stories across the country. I'm Kayode Pikilu. To have a fantastic night ahead.